Good morning. Oh, let's try that again. Good morning. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of breath from running. It is a pleasure for me, though, to welcome you to the first plenary session for the 2017 ACTFL Annual Convention. As you know, we address issues of national and international importance at our plenary sessions. And I have to say, with a heavy heart, a very heavy heart, that today's topic is both one of international importance and very personal and close to me as the supervisor of world languages for the state of Oklahoma. We know this issue is of international importance because last year we were joined by Jim Murphy, president of the Canadian Association of Second Language Teachers, CASALT, and he laid out the issues they are facing in Canada that were eerily similar to those we are facing in the U.S. In my own state of Oklahoma, we have been cited in the press for the high number of emergency teaching certificates. We have been granting several, which are surging from 98 in 2010 to more than 900 by 2015, and over 1,000 this year. Nationally, this year's teacher shortage list from the U.S. Department of Education indicates that 43 states plus the District of Columbia reported shortages in language educators for the 2017-2018 school year. It is not a badge of honor to now be listed as the fourth most critical shortage area after special education, math, and science. I had the opportunity this year, as part of my responsibilities as ACTFL president, to attend a symposium in Washington, D.C., sponsored by the National Center on Education and the Economy, featuring the latest publication of Linda Darling Hammond and her group at the Learning Policy Institute. Her publication, entitled Empowered Educators, is a new international comparative study of teaching quality systems around the world. They learned a great deal from other countries about their teacher recruitment, preparation, and induction, professional work, and their environments, and efforts to elevate the status of teaching. I want to let you know that the ACTFL Board of Directors has taken this issue very seriously and incorporated measures into our strategic plan to help solve this national crisis. I am pleased to have with me today to discuss these issues two of those people who are helping to address this crisis. First, Dr. Richard Ingersoll, Professor of Education and Sociology in the Graduate School of Education at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Ingersoll's research is concerned with the character of elementary and secondary schools as workplaces, teachers as employees, and teaching as a job. He has published over 100 articles, reports, chapters, and essays on topics such as the management and organization of schools, accountability and control in schools, teacher supply, demand, shortages, and turnover, induction and mentoring for beginning teachers, teacher preparation, and teacher quality. The problem of underqualified teachers, the status of teaching as a profession, and changes in the demographic character of the teaching force. He is very well versed. From that description, you can tell that he has a lot to share with us this morning. Joining Dr. Ingersoll is Bill Anderson. Bill is Curriculum Associate for Languages Other Than English, LOTE, K-12, for the Massapequa School District in New York. Bill is currently serving as the Northeast Conference representative to the ACTFL Board, and in that capacity, he is also the chair of the ACTFL Convention Committee. As you might imagine, a very time-consuming responsibility in addition to his day job. Before we hear from our two panelists, I would like to encourage all of you to join in the recruitment effort by getting involved in ACTFL's latest innovation, Educators Rising. We partnered with this organization and have developed program modules and videos that teachers and professors can use with students to create the excitement that we all felt as we engaged in teaching language as a career. As you heard this morning, if you were in the opening session, we leave a legacy and create even more of an impact when our students follow us into the language profession. If you visit the ACTFL website, you will find the Educators Rising resources, including a resource library of videos ranging from inspiring videos from our National Language Teachers of the Year to information about joining the language teaching profession. It is a resource library created on inspiration to guide and to ignite student interest, pathways to introduce students to the professional networks and support systems, and practice the opportunity to have their own teaching experience. There are 5 modules for you to use with students, perhaps in an after-school setting or service learning project, or in conjunction with a club or like an honor society. The modules focus on why teaching is a rewarding career, what resources exist for language teachers, the important role that advocacy plays in the language profession, understanding the impact one has as an educator, and how to become a positive role model through teaching. Let's watch a video created by Katrina Griffin, teacher of German in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, and the 2016 National Language Teacher of the Year, with inspirational thoughts from the members of her department and some of her students.
So why did you decide to take a language course?
First of all, I had a friend when I was a freshman who was in German, and whenever we would talk to each other, we would be really excited about German. So that's where I kind of became enthusiastic about the language, and I thought I'd try it out. So I took German 1 and I really liked it. And so I moved on and took German 2, and I began to love the language, and I love the teacher to teach it here.
I took a language course because I was really interested in the other cultures and stuff. Plus, I like the sounds of other languages. I think they're cool.
So why are you interested in the language that you are teaching?
I started studying Spanish because my mom had studied it when she was in high school, and we grew up in a house where learning other languages and traveling and getting to know other places was seen as really exciting. So I started studying Spanish because my mom did, but then I stuck with it because I started having experiences using the language. I teach Spanish, so I've always been interested in it. Growing up, I enjoyed taking classes, and when I was in high school, I made friends with a bunch of ESOL students who didn't speak in English, so I always thought it was great to be able to help them out, take them around the school, and just hang out with them and try and use the language that I was learning in class.
Do you plan on furthering your knowledge of the language you are taking after high school?
Yes, I do plan to study in Germany after a year of university here, and I plan to stay there.
I'm considering minoring in German. If the school I go to offers it, I'll probably stay in a German club of some kind, and I'd probably like to study abroad in Germany for a year.
In your opinion, based on experiences, how does learning another language benefit today's students?
So I know one thing I always tell my students is they don't always see how they can use the language outside of school.
I think it helps you see the world in a different way. It helps you see more than just your own little bubble, and I think that's a skill that we especially need here today.
So we asked a lot about what you think students can gain, but what do you think you've gained being a foreign language teacher?
One of the things that I've learned by being a foreign language teacher is that the language is the byproduct, and really what I'm here to do is teach students and help students be successful in whatever they want to do, and to teach them that learning a language is something that they can take with them wherever they go and whatever they do, and they don't have to try and figure out life while they're in school with me. They don't have to figure out what they want to do, that they can just learn different things and keep the door open and just let life take them where they need to go.
What do you have to say to any of the students who are interested in teaching a foreign language? Do it.
I say go for it.
I would encourage them to do it.
I would say that it's very rewarding.
To the students who already know that they are interested in teaching a foreign language, kudos to you, because I definitely did not know that I was interested in teaching a foreign language.
It is a challenge, but it's an exciting challenge.
It can be hard work sometimes, but at the end, I always have fun every single day teaching it.
You won't regret it. It's great.
I think you should go to the country where they speak the language that you want to teach and really immerse yourself in the culture for, 6 months to a year. Hopefully you get to stay a really long time, and to learn about the culture and to really learn the language, and to then become a teacher.
I urge you to initiate a program at your school and start some of your students on the path to a career in teaching. I would now like to turn the podium over to Dr. Richard Ingersoll so he can share his research with us on this topic, and then we will hear from Bill Anderson. Dr. Ingersoll.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Well, as Dessa said, I do research on teachers and teacher supply, demand, and quality, and I'm going to spend just a few minutes this morning summarizing what the data tell us about this teacher shortage crisis that we hear so much about. Well, first, the story that we hear, it's very simple. It goes like this. Student enrollments have gone up, teacher retirements have gone up, we don't produce enough teachers, schools are having to scramble, they have unfilled positions, and so as a result we have dozens of recruitment initiatives, student loan forgiveness and housing assistance and recruitment from overseas, all designed to bring more people into teaching, all under the assumption that we don't make enough teachers. These are very worthwhile things to do, and they certainly bring people in, but they alone have not and will not solve the teacher shortage problem. There's something of a wrong diagnosis, wrong prescription here going on. Let me briefly just tell us what the national data tell us about this problem. Okay, and I'm sorry if you can't see these in the back, but you could come forward. These are national data that get at just how extensive the shortages are. And the darker purple lines there are the percentage of secondary school principals that indicate that their school at the beginning of the 11-12 school year had a vacancy, at least one vacancy in a given field. And then the yellow bar is the percentage of all the secondary schools where they had serious, not minor, serious problems filling those vacancies. So at the top, we can see that 45% of the secondary schools had at least one opening in math at the beginning of that school year, or in the summer before that school year. And 17% of all the schools, something, between a third and a half of those schools had serious problems filling them. Let's move down to foreign language in the middle. Foreign language, just under a third of the secondary schools had openings in the country, and over a third of them had serious problems. So what do these data tell us? That yes, there's serious problems out there, but it's not all schools. We need to figure out where the problems are. That's the first thing these data tell us. But the second thing the research tells us is that these hiring difficulties, these shortages, are not solely due to the fact that we make too few teachers. That can be a problem, particularly in foreign languages and math and science and special education. That's not the sole factor. Another factor is that we lose too many teachers. In other words, the diagnosis, the source of the problem isn't simply that we make too many, but we also lose too many. The problem isn't simply supply, it's also turnover. And so hence the solution can't simply be more recruitment initiatives. And that's what we mainly have in this country. We also need to improve retention. Teaching, it turns out, is a high turnover, high quit, high migration, high attrition, whatever terms we use, line of work. It's also a very, very large line of work. In fact, elementary secondary teaching, according to Census Bureau, is the largest occupation in the nation. So we combine these two facts. It's a very large occupation, and it has relatively high turnover rates of teachers, and we end up with the following scenario I've tried to capture here. Let me explain this graph. This is beginning and the end of the 2011-2012 school year. And that yellow arrow on the left is all the teachers that came into public schools in the beginning of that school year. Something over 1/3 That's a lot. And then the middle part is that's sort of the size of the teaching force that year, just under 4 million. And then notice that orange arrow to the right, those are the teachers that left their schools 10, 12 months later at the end of that 11-12 school year. Notice that the orange over 500,000 arrow is larger than the yellow. So what do these data tell us? They tell us that in this 11-12 month period, over a quarter of the nation's largest occupation, elementary secondary teaching, was in job transition, either moving into, between, or out of schools. The term we use to describe this kind of flux and churn in a line of work is the revolving door. Now I'm going to move ahead, but I should say I've run this same slide for foreign language teachers. And I'm sorry to say with foreign language teachers, the door revolves even faster, so to speak. There's large flows of foreign language teachers into schools every year, and there's large flows out each and every year. However, it's also important to note that these overall figures mask the fact that there's very large school-to-school differences in these turnover rates, in these departures of teachers from schools. And we've done these analyses, and we show that almost half of all the turnover, all the teachers that left their schools in a given year, take place in only a quarter of the schools. It's not equally distributed. We'll have affluent suburban schools that maybe lose 10% of their teachers each year, which is really quite average for occupations and organizations in general. On the other hand, we'll have urban poor schools that lose a quarter on average of their teachers each and every year. So there's these large school-to-school differences. And this brings us up to the why question. Why is it that elementary secondary teaching has such high turnover, quit rates? And more specifically, why is it that some schools have so much more than others? The next slide gives some reasons that teachers give, and in this case, the reasons that foreign language teachers give in this country. These are foreign language teachers that moved from or left their schools, and they're asked why in these national data that I analyze, why? And I've clumped these into reasons here. Retirement is a very small slice at the top, which is interesting because we keep hearing about this graying hair crisis, this aging of the teaching force, that this is what's driving the shortages. Well, not really. Yes, there's retirement, but it's actually a relatively small portion of the large flows, in this case, of foreign language teachers out of schools every year. School staffing actions, the next bar, that's where there's school reorganization, school closings, teachers are laid off, those types of things. Involuntary transfers. Family or personal is where a foreign language teacher tells us that they left their school because they wanted to raise babies, they needed to care for elderly folks, their spouse moved to another state, they had health concerns. You know, it's just sort of part of life. People are going to leave their jobs for these reasons all the time. The last two bars are the ones that really concern me. 39% of foreign language teachers who left say they did so because they wanted to pursue another or better job or career. And then finally, the longest bar of all, that bottom one, over half of the foreign language teachers who left their schools said they were dissatisfied. It turns out their major reasons for dissatisfaction are student discipline problems, salaries, classroom intrusions, and the whole issue of having voice into the decisions that affect their jobs in the building. These types of things. So, So let me just return back to that conventional wisdom. We have these shortages, and they're mostly driven by these demographic trends. We don't make enough teachers, and we have a student enrollment increases, and so hence we need to bring more people in. And that's fine, but let me give you the example of math science. President Obama, and this is not to beat up on President Obama, like many presidents, initiated a whole program called 100K and 10 to bring in more math science teachers in this country. And this was started in 2010, and the idea was to bring in 10,000 new math science teachers into schools each year for 10 years, 100,000. Who could be against that? That's a wonderful thing, and last I heard $60 million were spent on this. But look at the data. The data tell us that between the 08 and 09 year alone, over 30,000 math science teachers left teaching. So the president's initiative wants to bring in 10,000 a year, but in 1 year, 36,000 left. Of them, 10,000 retired, another 20,000 left due to dissatisfaction. It's not that the president's recruitment initiative is wrong, it's that it's only half the fix. We need to not simply just enhance recruitment, we also need to improve retention. The image that always comes to mind to me is the bucket with holes in the bottom. So the metaphor is we just keep pouring more teachers into schools, but they're leaking out of the bottom at a fast rate. We need to sort of figure out what are their sources of dissatisfaction and slow down the high rates of turnover of teachers, in this case, foreign language teachers. So the bottom line here is if we want to ensure a qualified foreign language teacher in front of every classroom, we need to reduce the high levels of turnover. And to do that, we need to improve those conditions in schools so teachers won't be so dissatisfied. Thank you very much.
Good morning. So I am a school administrator in the Massapequa School District, and my role is curriculum associate for world languages. So I recruit, hire, train, collaborate with world language teachers on a daily basis. And even in New York, and my district, Massapequa, if you don't know it, is a very small geographic district in a very highly populated, densely populated area of the South Shore of Long Island. And in our district, we have a history of cultivating language teachers. In fact, 6 of our current world language teachers, 6 of our 39 world language teachers are Massapequa alumni who were inspired by their language teachers to continue on as language teachers and stay in the district. We also have a very successful American Sign Language program in our district. We have students that go on every year to become ASL interpreters, ASL teachers, teachers of the deaf, psychologists who work with deaf clients. So we have a very strong program, and our teachers are motivating students to continue on with the language. So the national shortage is also impacting us in New York, and we were very excited when ACTFL started the Educators Rising initiative, and we jumped on board just recently this school year. And we held an informational meeting for students. We attracted them by saying, do you love learning a world language? Well, come and talk about it. So we had a club after school, and they came to talk about why they love learning languages. And we talked about the idea of possibly pursuing a career in teaching language. That led to follow-up meetings, and we used the modules on the ACTFL Educators Rising site. And the site has great resources, very inspirational videos, great resources, articles, scholarly articles talking about the shortage. There's one survey that talks about what my peers think about teaching. And the students read through what their peers thought, and they had to decide whether they agree or disagree with those thoughts on teaching. So it really gave them some insight into the idea of teaching as a career. And we had some students who presented mini lessons in their classes, in their AP classes or their more advanced college classes. And we are hoping to offer them some internships in the spring within their language classes, similar to a student teaching experience, but while they're still in high school. And we're also helping some of them with the college application process. We've worked with some of the organizations, some of the AATs, specifically the AATG, to find out where there are excellent teacher preparation programs around the country, specifically for that student's language. So speaking of AATG, they have a great advocacy and outreach program, and they ran their Teach German Day this year. And we had 2 students who were excited, and they taught mini lessons in their AP German class. And in fact, one of them, Evan Warrens, was highlighted in the AATG newsletter for his inspiration by his German teachers and his devotion to wanting to become a German teacher. He's very excited. The recruitment process is a challenge, but I rely on networking at conferences such as the ACTFL Convention and local conferences in New York. Also, we work with, we've developed some relationships with local colleges and universities in New York and to build a streamline of student teachers. And I encourage our teachers in the district to host and work with those student teachers, or at least provide them the opportunity to do observation hours in the classroom. Because if teachers aren't willing to do that, then those student teachers are going to have some difficulty securing their certification. That is our experience with Educators Rising, and we hope to expand this program within our district and to other districts on Long Island. And so I want to thank ACTFL for their support in this very critical national shortage that we're having. Thank you very much.
Thank you to both of our panelists. We would like now to take comments and questions from the audience. Please approach one of the microphones and identify yourself, give your affiliation, and make your comment or ask your question. Yes.
I'm from Texas. I work at the University of Texas at Austin, and I train and mentor future teachers of world languages. This semester, on my incoming role for interns, we have a 4-semester program. So for the 3rd semester, which I teach, I had 4 who signed up, University of 60,000 students. Of the 4, one of them never really finished the process. I'm hoping to see him. Another one had issues with a course. I may actually have a group of interns with only 2 students. Today, when we were entering this morning's event, I saw 2 amazing teachers. Both of them, one of them was the TEFLA Teacher of the Year, and the other one was a nominee for that position. Both of them work for the same school district. And I was asking them about their salary. New teacher in their district comes in at about, wasn't it 41, Amy? And after your full-time experience teaching 30 years at this particular district, the salary was $6,000 more. This is part of the problem. These teachers now, when I taught in Texas for 13 years. My teacher load, I had 5 classes. I eventually became the department chair, so I had 4, but a regular teacher had 5 classes. My class load was about 25 kids a class, so my class load was 125 students. Teachers today in Texas are on a block schedule. Most of them have a class load of, on the little side, they have about 160 students. They have as many as 180. These teachers have classes that, especially in the Spanish classes, in the Spanish lower level classes, they may start off in Spanish 1 with 40 kids in a classroom that was designed for 25 students. The teachers have given many more responsibilities in terms of just everything from being in the cafeteria during lunch to tutorial duties, just a lot of extra things that are on their plate. I was talking to one of my students. I had a superstar group of kids. Actually, 4 of my interns and student teachers are presenting at this conference. I hope you all will go see them. They're talking about inquiry-based lesson planning. Anyway, one of them was going to teach Arabic. She was hired in a district where UT and the Qatar Foundation established a program in Arabic. And it's been going around for 3 years. It was funded for 3 years by the Qatar Foundation. She was hired this year, and she was going to teach in 2 schools. Well, in one of the schools, they decided, nah, let's just put them on distance learning because we really need a teacher to teach Avid. So in her school where she's actually been hired, she's teaching about 3 courses of Arabic, and all the rest of her 6 courses that they teach today in Texas are called Avid, which it's not a bad thing to teach, but she wants to teach Arabic. So she told me she's leaving and going to higher education. The problems are enormous, enormous.
Thank you. The next speaker.
I'm John Sarkissian. I'm the department chair at Youngstown State University in Ohio. I myself am a class assist, so I'm chair of a department that produces language teachers, but we don't have a program in my own languages. I'm a little hesitant to bring this up, but the fact of the matter is the shift from intermediate high to advanced low is squeezing us. We're under pressure from the administration to get people through in 4 years. We have students, some of whom for financial and other reasons cannot study abroad for extended periods of time. And we're also under pressure to continue the national recognition which we have earned. And those competing pressures are going to make things more and more difficult. We don't produce a large number of language teachers, but we do produce language teachers, most of whom stay in the area. And quite frankly, kids who have the wherewithal to go to the more prestigious state schools or to private schools are not coming back to Struthers or Camel, Ohio to be language teachers. And I would just ask that as part of this conversation, the requirement for a program to retain national recognition, that advanced low requirement be scrutinized for the practical considerations. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your comments. Michael?
Michael Bacon, Portland Public Schools. I'm also on the ACTFL board, and I heard the presentation yesterday and was very much intrigued with the revolving door concept. And so we've worked a lot on the supply side or trying to recruit teachers, but I'm really intrigued to hear about what you would see. And I know the data points to potential solutions, but maybe you could go a little further, Dr. Ingersoll, about what might be the low-hanging fruit, what are districts that and so forth that have worked on retention to keep our folks and slow down that revolving door. Thank you.
Yes, great question. What can we do to slow down the revolving door, or to use the other metaphor, plug some of the holes in the bottom of the bucket? Well, here's 3 quick things the data suggest. One is ensure that the pre-service preparation of teachers includes how to teach, particularly student practice teaching. Now, to some of you, that might seem like a no-brainer, but it turns out over 1/5 of the new teachers in the country, their first day on the job in an elementary or secondary school is the first day in front of kids. that they've gone through programs, sometimes traditional programs, sometimes alternative programs, what have you, where they've had no student or practice teaching. It turns out that if you haven't, 40% of you are gone in 1 year. Huge turnover rate. So that's one thing, is don't skip practice teaching in the pre-service prep programs. A second thing is, it turns out that there's very, very high turnover rates amongst beginners in teaching in the first 5 years. And we now have substantial research showing that providing support programs, often the term used is induction, it commonly includes a veteran teacher who's a mentor, that these actually help. They help teacher retention, they help student scores and whatnot. So support, induction, mentoring programs for beginning teachers is the second concrete thing that could be done. I'm not sure it's low-hanging fruit, but it's hanging fruit. And the third thing is giving teachers voice in the decisions in the building that impact their jobs. This is called site-based decision-making, or teacher input into decision-making, or the new phrase often used is teacher leadership. And, you know, this is the hallmark of professions. The professionals are experts. They have some input into the decision-making. We have strong data now showing that buildings in which teachers have more say have better teacher retention and better student achievement. So those are three concrete things.
Go ahead.
Hello, I am Kelly Moser from Mississippi State University. Last year, I brought all of my teacher candidates to ACTFL. It was their first experience at a professional conference and their first experience to be surrounded by language teachers. It was instrumental for them. I'm happy to say that all of them are still language teachers in the state. And I asked them why they are still language teachers in the state, and one of the reasons that comes up is because they remember this experience. So one of my questions is, has ACTFL considered having opportunities for students who are considering teachers, sessions specifically for students who are interested in teaching, or even teacher candidates, so that they're considering what it means to be a teacher?
Bill, I think you could field this one easily. He's our convention chair.
Yes, every year the convention committee works hard to put together a program that is going to be meaningful for the attendees, and we often make efforts to include sessions specifically for in-service teachers, student teachers, what to expect your first 5 years kind of sessions. So we are making efforts to include more of those in the program.
I'm Patty Davis-Wiley. I'm at the University of Tennessee, the other UT, in Knoxville. I've been there since 1980. And I can't tell you how many wonderful teachers that I have who've gone through our shop are still teachers. Why are they? We have a 5th-year plan. It's a graduate program. We have 24 undergraduate hours. Our folks have to test via OPIs in our interview to allow them into teacher education at the advanced low. They are highly qualified. Over the past few decades, I have seen my number of method students. By the way, Kelly was one of my kids. She's now a professor doing what I do, which is kind of cool. I have grad students, which many of you may have also. And what's incredible when we stop to think about all of these students is that I had 15, 16 years ago. I have 2 coming up for the fall. However, we now have a job embedded program, which is the old transitional licensure program in the state of Tennessee for critical subjects, the STEM subjects, SPED Ed and world languages. I now have 6 job embedded. Fortuitously, the majority of these already have a master's degree in their content area. They are a phenomenal group of people. So what we are seeing, not so much a revolving door, but a seesaw, a teeter-totter effect. We have fewer people going into the year-long internship, more into the transitional licensure, and to date, we've only had 2 that have gone out the back part of the revolving door. So my question is, how can programs like ours, who do the induction, who do all of the as you would say, student teaching, but ours is a year-long non-paid internship. They have to have been abroad for a semester, preferably a year. Most of us are OPI raters who actually conduct our induction interview to the Board of, to the teacher education program in the world language. We've vetted them. But how can we compete with an alternative licensure program in our state that puts them right in the classroom, and they get paid the second month they're there, yet they still have to do 24 graduate hours with us at the University of Tennessee, including 2 methods classes, assessment, evaluation, SPED Ed, and all this other stuff. So that's another thing I think we need to look at. How can we compete with those and retain students? And on another side, I think we're losing a lot of folks in the classroom. Yeah, they don't have the same classroom. Yes, they have to travel. But you know what's happening? I have teachers who have split levels, 1 and 2 and 3 different levels of the same language in the same physical space. And they're told by their principal, well, you either do this on your planning block, or we're not going to have this level of language. What is ACTFL going to help us? How are they going to help us with that? How are we going to get building principles? And I'm looking at administrator to realize it shouldn't make any difference if we only have 4 in AP, German, or French or Spanish. It should be the quality. We should be able to give it to them. And we have no tools to give these students. How to teach multi-level. And peer tutoring is not going to be the answer, nor is distance ed. So lots of things. I'm proud of where I am. I'm proud of my students. But again, we have the new program we have to compete with. And also, how do we get through to administrators to allow our teachers not to have to be forced to do multiple levels in order to have an articulated program? Thank you.
I think your situation resonates with many. Would either one of you care to address that one?
Well, your point about there's these alternative programs that don't seem to be thin, I gather, and don't prepare the students as well, and you're asking how you can compete with them. And I'm a data guy, I'm a research guy, and if you can show that in that case large numbers of them quit within a few years, then it's sort of, then in other words, we have a lot of experimentation in how to prepare teachers these days. There's full of innovation, and there's good experiments and bad experiments, and so the hope is that we can weed out the things that don't work very well. And that's what I'd suggest. If it's a fly-by-night operation and a lot of those people are quitting within 4 years, if that could come out, maybe the state would discontinue those programs. You might.
Good morning. I'm Allie Moeller, and I'm at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And I recently completed reading Linda Darling Hammond's Empowered Educators, in which they spent 2 years really looking at the 5 countries that have the highest achieving students. I'm also a statistician, so I relate. Now the question becomes, when you look at these 5 particular countries, they have very rigorous programs. The teachers are extremely valued. They're well paid. They are mentored extremely well and over time. So my question is, on the macro level, and it's for Dr. Ingersoll, what can we do when our system is so counterintuitive, as you just heard? What is happening is, of course, alternative routes are coming up because there are so many shortages. It seems like, we're chasing we're doing the wrong things all the time. What, in your opinion, can we do, and to whom do we communicate the message that teaching is a profession and not a job, that it requires lifelong learning, that Erickson's 10,000 hours applies as it does in every other profession, and how do we communicate that to our stakeholders? Because that seems to be the problem, is the lack of respect and the value for the profession. I'm not sure we're all driven by the money, although that's certainly a factor. But from the folks that I put through the program, that is not their first issue. Their first issue is to be valued by their students, by their administrators, and by the public. So what have you learned from your studies that could help us understand better how do we approach this problem that seems to be so overwhelming?
Okay, you very eloquently summarized the problem, that teaching does not have a lot of stature and status and respect, as do the traditional professions, law, academia, medicine, architecture, engineering, etc., in this country. And that's not new. It was designed that way from the beginning when the public school system was invented. And the aspiration to upgrade the status of teaching has been a century-long aspiration, which has not been particularly successful. In fact, over the last decade, there's been a great deal of what we call teacher bashing. So you're asking, well, what could be done? I often get demoralized when I think about this question. However, we are in a time of ferment and experimentation, not just in the preparation of teachers, of which there's 1,000 models out there now, but also the way we run and manage schools. I mean, the charter school sector is the window of innovation, and it innovates both good and bad, and of course it's a huge source of controversy. The reform that I personally really like is a small but growing movement of what are called teacher-powered schools. These are schools run by teachers.
Yeah,
they model themselves after law firms or architectural firms where the professionals own and run the firm. If the law firm fails, they're accountable for it. It's usually through a charter model, not always. It's a growing number, but growing number of these schools, and mostly in the Midwest, and teachers run them, and they do not have a boss, a principal. They run them as a group and through committees, and often these places end up with very student-centered curricula because the teachers are making those decisions. And by the way, they're an environment of accountability. They're held accountable. So that to me is that's a new thing. It never existed. I'm a former high school teacher. This idea of teachers being the professionals running buildings. That's a bright spot to me.
Well, I think that ties right in with motivation theory. When you take away autonomy, you're taking away choice and voice, and that's demoralizing.
Yes.
And so I agree with that, and that, of course, was one of the things that Darling Hammond, and by the way, there are a series of webinars that you can download on this subject that I would highly recommend you try to view.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you.
I've worked a lot with Linda, yes.
And I will let you know that we are running out of time. I doubt that we will have more time for any more than 2 questions at the most, just to let you know. Next.
My name is Patrick Wallace, and I represent the Georgia Department of Education. And your message at the opening session really resonates with me, and that is giving teachers a voice. And I think that I want to applaud ACTFL for unfolding this Educators Rising initiative. In Georgia, we have a program called the World Language Educator of the Month that I launched in August. So I'm going out to schools and I'm honoring world language teachers, and we're doing it in front of their kids. We're doing it in front of their administrators. And, you know, that old saying, gold and silver have I none, but that which I have, I am free to give. So I want to make sure our teachers know that they are valued. So we have to be innovative. And I guess my question then is, what have you thought about as Educators Rising unfolds? What are some ways forward beyond what's right there right now that you see? I always say test the water with 1 foot so you don't drown. So we have a world language job fair for the state of Georgia. It'll be the first of its kind. We have a university college advisory board to the Department of Ed, so I'm in direct contact and very transparent with 27 of our colleges and university world language programs. So I believe very much in creating structures that create synergy and that create transparency of information, because I believe that that fosters an atmosphere of more innovation. So I guess, again, my question is, I'm excited about Educators Rising. Where's it going?
May I tackle that one?
Sure.
Being from a state that has a lot of difficulties and a lot of financial difficulties on top of that. I'm not sure if this is a great solution, but I think it is at least getting people together to talk about it. We created a task force, a statewide task force that will then report to the superintendent of public instruction, as well as the governor and the legislature, about what we feel is needed and what we can do in the short term and what needs to happen, and create a plan. It's something. I'm not sure, do either one of you want to suggest something else? I'm not sure if that's the one and only answer, but it's one that we came up with.
Well, I think it's true that we are in a world of innovation now. We've recognized the problem, so I want to encourage more innovation on those fronts. So I think, and I applaud ACTFL for being innovative and moving in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Connie Navarro. I'm the president of the Colorado Congress of Foreign Language Teachers. And my day job is I'm the peer observer for world languages for Denver Public Schools. So with those two buckets of work, I want to, as a solution-based thinker, tell you some of the things that I'm really proud of that we're doing in Denver and in Colorado, both in the state organization and in our district, to offer ideas to the assembled body. And then my follow-up question would be, I haven't had a chance to really look at Educator Rising, but how might those things be supported through that, and how might we expand this to other states? So in the state organization that I'm president of, one of the things that we're doing to support early career teachers is inviting them specifically, we're targeting them specifically to any PD that we do, and lowering the cost for them in their first 3 years of being in the profession, that we really need them to come and be among us, not just so we have seats filled at our conference, but so that we're making a difference for early career people. We have reduced conference prices, we have a scholarship for them, for a handful of them to attend for free, and we have reduced membership prices for them. So that's something that we feel like is important to get early career people some support and a network and the training that they need. In my day job as peer observer for world languages, I observe, evaluate, and coach specifically world language teachers. And Denver got that early career support for teachers, specifically by taking some of the data that Dr. Ingersoll is talking about and saying, when we hire 900 new teachers in our district every year, it costs a lot of money to find them, recruit them, interview them, train them, get them set up, and then the revolving door starts again. So our teachers union took that to the Board of Education and very forcefully requested over and over again for specific coaching for new teachers, for early career teachers, and then this content area support. So we have a music peer observer, we have a math peer observer, we have different content people that is really making a difference to keep people in the profession so that some of these holes in the buckets that we've been talking about can be addressed. So I invite you to think about how you might do that where you live. And then I guess my follow-up question is, how does that mesh with the work that Educators Rising is doing to help us be empowered to advocate at the state level and in our districts?
Thank you for sharing that. Bill, do you have something to add about Educators Rising? I don't think we're to that point yet, but the discussion will continue. I'm afraid we are out of time. I would like to thank our panelists for their presentations and the audience members for your interest in this topic. You can rest assured that you will be hearing more from ACTFL about how you can become involved in being a part of the solution for this crisis of teacher shortages in our field. Please look for that, and thank you so much for attending today.